Hello and welcome everybody to episode 2 of my Grim Dawn basic series. This time I'm gonna talk about the Masteries in Grim Dawn, and before that I'm gonna show you like a small, short way to get level 2 very quickly in this game.
Still drawing breath, I see.
Also, I mean, this is where you start in the game, right? So you talk to this Hangman Jarvis here, and if you care about the lore in this game, I suggest to you to check it out, certainly. Like, Grim Dawn's lore is pretty nice, especially for an ARPG.
Bad for someone just come back from the brink of death. The bodies of the you will need to.
It's not as good as, say, the lore of a typical RPG, as maybe like Skyrim or, I don't know, Gothic 1, etc. But for an ARPG I think it's great, and it's certainly more complex than it's more complex than, say, Diablo's lore, for example, and I do like it a lot. So yeah, this is where you will be, right? You will be here in the prison, and then you will have to start crossing this bridge to fight some enemies. Before we do that though, let's zoom out a bit here by scrolling up with our mouse wheel, and then we hold down the mouse wheel to turn the camera like this. You can alternatively also assign any button you like to camera, zoom in, zoom out, rotate, etc. Right? And then you will see a crudely scrawled note over here. Now, this is inside the prison, and as you might know, you cannot enter this before you do like the first quest here, before you gain some trust with Captain Bourbon. But you can still click it from outside the prison, right? You just click it, and your character will still pick it up even when you're like outside. Now, you hit your character sheet button here, and then you right-click the door node here. And what will happen is that since you get experience for lore in this game, you will be almost level 2 this way. So now you only have to, like, I don't know, kill 1 or 2 more zombies. You can also click on this corpse here to get like a nice yellow jacket in this case. And let's kill some zombies here. There are always some spawning here. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, and there we go. We are level 2 already. And now you can see these two things blinking down here, the character window and the skills window. You can open the character window to assign attribute points, and you can open the skills window to now assign your skill points into one of the 9 masteries of Grim Dawn. Now there are 9 masteries. There are 6 in the vanilla game: Soldier, Demo, Occultist, Nightblade, Arcanist, Shaman. Inquisitor, Necromancer are exclusive to the Ashes of Malmoth expansion, and Oathkeeper is exclusive to the Forgotten Gods expansion. Let's start with the Soldier mastery. The Soldier Mastery is a very basic and very beginner-friendly mastery. It has 3 different main damage abilities like Force Wave, Cadence, and Blade Arc, focusing on physical, internal trauma, bleed, and pierce damage. Blade Arc has some bleed, Force Wave has some physical here, but also lots of internal trauma over here, and Cadence just has like physical damage and some bleed as well, but it's mostly about physical. Now, since armor piercing on weapons converts also physical to pierce damage basically, especially Cadence and Force Wave can also be used for piercing builds. The Soldier furthermore has some support abilities like Overguard and Shield Training, specializing for shields, and things like Warcry and Break Morale, focusing on reducing enemy damage and also reducing enemy physical resistance. So it's not only a good like physical damage class, but also a good support class for shields and physical damage, and also actually for two-handers, because for example the Tremor Transmitter here only works for two-handers, and Menhir's Will works for two-handers and shields as well. This is like a circuit breaker. This is also one of the main defense that Soldier has. It's, yeah, whenever you drop below a 13 threshold, you get healed by a certain amount depending on how many points you put here. The best leveling ability for Soldier, in my opinion, is the Force Wave ability. Use Force Wave with a two-hander with this Tremor Transmitter, and you also use like Blade Arc with a transmitter on top of that for like a nuke, but first to max out the Force Wave skill tree here, and then the Blade Arc skill tree, and also use an exclusive like All-Around's Rage. Now, almost every mastery in Grim Dawn also has an exclusive, or even 2 exclusive skills. Soldier has 2 exclusive skills. Number 1 is All-Around's Rage, focusing on offensive ability, internal trauma, and physical and pierce damage, and movement speed. And the second one is Menhir's Bulwark, which is more the defensive version of this, and this also requires a shield. You cannot use this without a shield. Next up we got the Demolitionist class. The Demolitionist is an expert when it comes to all kinds of explosives. And his damage types are mostly fire, lightning, and also a little bit of like physical pierce and internal trauma. Also, he has pretty nice support skills for both elemental and chaos and aether. Like the thermite mine here, reducing both elemental resistance and aether and chaos resistance, makes Demolitionist a nice support class for both elemental and chaos and aether builds. The Demolitionist basically has 3 main damage grenades and also 1 main damage default attack replacer. The Fire Strike is the default attack replacer, then he has Stunjacks, Granados, and Canister Bomb as its 3 type of grenades. On top of that, the Demolitionist also has the Mortar Trap. This can also be used as your main damage ability later on. You basically just drop down the mortar, and the mortar will start firing projectiles at your enemy. Not only does Demolitionist have 5 main damage abilities, and also thermite mines, he has also some nice debuffs in Flashbang, and some nice self-buff of Vindictive Flame and Flame Touched, and also most importantly, he has the Blast Shield Circuit Breaker. This is basically the only main defense that Demolitionist has, but it is a very good circuit breaker that procs around 60% of your HP, gives you huge absorption and nice plus all resistances. Now the Demolitionist does not have a exclusive ability, but he has Alduin's Chosen, which is kind of like a bonus towards any grenade build. Like if you play Canister Bomb, Grenado or Stunjacks, you should always use Alduin's Chosen as well. Also, the best leveling ability for Demolitionist early on is the Blackwater Cocktail, and it's also okay for like a burn caster to use this as a like main ability or like one of its main abilities, and it also serves very well even in the endgame on non-burn casters as a debuff for OA and resistances. Since Blackwater Cocktail's damage falls off a bit after some levels, around level like 30 usually already, you should start investing more points into either Fire Strike or one of these grenades. Like I have some experience with Canister Bomb and Grenado at least. These are really good. I don't really know how good Stunjacks is for leveling really. I know that you can make some Stunjack splits in the endgame, but yeah, my suggestion would be either to use Blackwater Cocktail and then Canister Bomb and Grenado to level, or Blackwater Cocktail into Fire Strike. The Cocktail into Mortar Trap is, I believe, a viable method to level Demolitionist as well. Now the Occultist is a Eldritch caster slash summoner, which basically summons all different horrors from Eldritch realms. Occultist class is all about Chaos, Acid, Vitality, and Pet damage. For pets, he has the Summon Familiar, really nice small raven that can heal you, also deal quite some elemental and lightning damage. And also he has the Hellhound, which deals some nice fire and chaos damage. And also when he explodes, he will deal like a huge explosion damage around him as well. For pet support, Occultist has the Bonds of Bismiel line here, and also the Blood line, which are like one of the best pet support lines in the game. Additionally, you can use the Dreek's Evil Eye line as a main damage ability, or you use like a combination of Sigil of Consumption, Doombolt, and Bloody Pox line as like your main damage. Occultist is probably the best support class in the game, especially because of Curse of Frailty. Now this one has support for physical damage, bleeding damage, poison damage, vitality damage, and elemental damage, reducing all of those resistances on your enemy. And also the Blood of Dreeg line, which is basically a heal. So this is also pretty much Occultist's only defense though, the heal on Blood of Dreeg. And also gives you lots of physical resistance and poison resistance over here on Aspect of the Guardian. For Chaos and especially attack speed focused charge is the Solaris Witchfire here, giving you flat Chaos and attack speed. And also Second Right, giving you flat Vitality Decay and Vitality damage and Vitality resistance as well. The exclusive skill of Occultist is Possession. This one gives you another bunch of flat chaos damage and also damage absorption, so this is kind of the second defensive skill apart from Blood of Dreeg here. And yeah, also some chaos resistance and 100% skill disruption protection, which is pretty nice for example a Aether Ray build. Now for leveling an Occultist, I suggest either to use the Bloody Pox line here with Fevered Rage. This might be a little bit sketchy sometimes because enemies gain like a huge offensive boost, but at the same time it like lose lots of their defensive ability. And this is pretty fast leveling if you are like confident enough to do this. You can support this with like a Doom Bolt or a Sigil of Consumption if you want to go for the caster way. And also the Curse of Frailty here to slow enemies down a little bit, because they gain like lots of movement speed here as well. Another way to level an Occultist would be focusing on the Dreeg's Evil Eye line, but as far as I know that's a little bit worse than Bloody Pox line. Alternatively, it is certainly also viable to level an Occultist using the pets here and the pet buffs. Occultist is one of, if not the best pet class in the game after all. Now the next mastery is the Nightblade. The Nightblade is your dual wield mastery of choice if you wanna dual wield melee. Also, he is like a Phantasmal Blades caster, so he also infuses his melee weapons with like phantasmal energies, and also he can throw knives. So if you wanna throw knives, this is also the class to go for. He basically has 3 main damage lines. The first one is the dual wield line, like you have this like ability to dual wield and then you use like a default attack replacer either from like another class, or you use like the Shard of Baronath, which is like a component that you can use. And then you also use like all these weapon pool skills. Now the way weapon pool skills work is they have a certain chance to proc of your default attack. So either the normal attack, weapon attack, or like any default attack replacer as well. The second way, like the second main damage line is the Phantasmal Blades line. This is like at the caster Nightblade that uses blades to, well, that's kind of a ranged blade thrower basically. And then you also have Shadow Strike. Shadow Strike line, you usually use like 1 point here for mobility, but you can also like heavily invest here, and also if you have the right gear, you can make Shadow Strike a really nice main damage ability as well. There's also a Marasa's Blade Burst, which buffs your flat damage quite a bit. This is like the lethal assault part here is really good when you go like dual wield line. And there are also some builds that can use Marasa's Blade Burst as kind of like their main or like a side main damage ability as well. But most of the time you just 1-point this and max out this one here. Also it has very nice support for like cold, pierce and acid damage in general. Especially in Night's Chill, like this is an aura here, Blade of Shadow, Night's Chill, very nice aura. And this reduces enemy pierce, cold and acid resistance around the Nightblade. This also meshes really well with like the main damage types of Nightblade. The main damage types for Nightblades are cold, acid and pierce damage, alongside some like poison and frostburn, which are just like the damage over time components of acid and cold. And also has some vitality damage, and actually some chaos damage here as well, another edge. So you can play around like with Vitality Phantasmal Blades, for example, maybe like Vitality Shadow Strike as well, or like Vitality Dual Wield as well, depending on which secondary mastery you chose. Also he has the Ring of Steel ability, which is usually just used as a 1-pointer, and Circle of Slaughter, which has the Fumble debuff, which is pretty nice. Fumble basically makes your enemies' melee attacks miss on you, on top of, yeah, other like ways to miss you, such as missing by DA or missing by dodge. There are basically 3 ways an enemy can miss an attack on you. Also for defense, it relies on Dramatic Burst, which is basically a heal. You can use this every 10 seconds, or every 5 seconds if you're dual wielding. Also, there's the Blade Barrier, which basically makes you invulnerable for 3 seconds. And this is kind of like a panic button that you can use as well whenever you're playing a Nightblade. I think this is really good for caster Nightblades. It's not really that good for like melee Nightblades, but it's okay. Like if you're a new player, I suggest to always like put 1 point here and just try it out. And just like press that button whenever you're like panicking or something. And you have like 3 seconds to think about what you want to do next. Also the Blade Trap is pretty nice debuff ability as well, that you can use for leveling, but also note that this is very similar to Olextra's Flash Freeze in the Arcanist tree that I'm gonna talk about very soon. This doesn't work on bosses, or like most bosses, so it's kinda useless in the endgame, unless you have a specific set called the Runtime set, then you can actually use this even in the endgame. And then he has also 3 passive nodes here, which are pretty nice. You can put some points here for like armor, pierce resistance, this is for cunning, damage to humans, etc. This is for poison, cold, acid damage. Also the Nightblade has a player scaled pet called the Blade Spirit. You can use this also to support your damage. This can be like a kind of a main damage ability, like secondary main damage ability as well, if you have like pretty good gear for it. Otherwise it's pretty much always worth to put 1 point here, because this is very good at proccing devotions. Now for leveling a Nightblade I suggest 2 ways. Way number 1 would be Phantasmal Blades as a caster. Way number 2 would be Dual Blades line and maxing out Lethal Assault. But what you can do before either using Phantasmal Blades or Dual Blade line is max out Knight's Chill. This will help you out like in the first 10 to 15 levels a lot. Because this AoE does quite some damage and everything around you will just die from like standing next to you. Next up we got the Arcanist, and the Arcanist is kinda your standard arcane mage, but not really, because the Arcanist also dipped into the power of Aether, and now not only does he have elemental damage, but also Aether damage. The Arcanist basically has 3 main damage abilities, with the 4th one being pretty okay as well. You can use Penetti's Replicating Missile as your main ability. Don't use this for leveling though, it's very bad for leveling. You can use Throws the Sky Shard as your main damage ability, or you can use Albrecht's Aether Ray as your main damage ability. Also viable for main damage is Kalidor's Tempest. You can either use this for burn builds, or like Kalidor's Tempest spam combined with Devastation as your support ability. You can also always use Devastation as a damage support for any of these like damage abilities whenever you have like the matching damage type. Now the Arcanist, unlike other classes, doesn't really have any resistance reduction except for Olextra's Flash Freeze. Olextra's Flash Freeze does have fire resistance reduction, but this is very similar to Blade Trap, so it doesn't really work on bosses, so endgame it's rather useless, especially the RR part, the resistance reduction part, unless you have a set called the Mage Slayer set, then you can actually also freeze some bosses. Now where Arcanist shines is in the defense department. You have Mirror of Eructus, which gives you 3 seconds invulnerability phase. Very nice, better than Blade Barrier. Basically the same, but you can still move around, the best panic button in the game. Then you have also Maven Sphere of Protection, giving you 3% damage absorption, and you have Conversion, giving you 3% CC resistance. On top of that you have Nullification, which basically nullifies all debuffs on yourself, and also removes all buffs on enemies that they have cast on themselves. Also it reduces enemy elemental damage for quite some time. That's really good as well, and it's one of the best skills in the game, I would say. Now on top of that, Arcanist also has 2 exclusive skills: Star Pact, focusing on CDR, cold damage and lightning damage, and also Aether to cold conversion. The second one, Reckless Power, focusing on fire and Aether damage, also attack speed and casting speed. Apart from the exclusive skills, it also has some passives here like Inner Focus, Arcane Will, Mental Alacrity, Fabric of Reality, focusing on like, well, what casters do, right, like casting speed, energy, some all damage, some spirit, offensive ability. And then also you have the Iskander's Elemental Exchange line. This is a toggleable buff line as well, giving you some elemental damage, some offensive ability and Aether resistance here, and some crit damage over here. Especially the Overload and Elemental Balance points are really good here. When it comes to leveling an Arcanist, I suggest you use Olextra's Flash Freeze early on. This is very good, huge AoE, basically insta-kills all trash around you, and this doesn't work that well on bosses, but you can complement Olextra's Flash Freeze with an ability called Fireball, which is an ability from a component called Searing Ember that you will find quite a lot of early on. And also you can upgrade that later on to have to use Flint Core Bolts that you can put on like a offhand, for example, and those will give you a greater Fireball as well. If you don't like the fire part, you can also go for Ice Spikes. Those are also abilities that you gain from components. After you have maxed out Olextra's Flash Freeze, I suggest also you pick up the Chosen Sky Shard line, and this is like your main damage ability for leveling after OFF and your component. An alternative line to level an Arcanist, if you rather want to focus more on fire, Aether damage instead of the cold lightning part here, is to Well, just use Alexa's Flash Freeze and your component until you hit like 25 points here, and then you just go all in 8th Array here. 8th Array is kind of decent for leveling now, in my opinion, and also you can gain a offhand in Act 3 from the boss of Act 3 that is really good for 8th Array as well. Next up we got the Shaman Mastery. The Shaman is a two-handed specialist and also a caster, especially totem caster specialist. His main damage abilities are Savagery line, Promise Strike line, Wind Devil line, and Storm Totems, and also pets actually. Now the damage types of a Shaman are mainly Lightning, Vitality, and then some bleed, physical, and cold damage as well as pet damage. Two-handed strength with this two-handed exclusive skill line over here, and then either you combine it with Savagery or with Promise Strike line or both. And also you can use the Wendigo Totem here in melee to heal you up as well. Or you go with the Lightning Caster route, focusing on Wind Devils and Storm Totems. Or you go for the Vitality Caster route, using Devouring Swarm as a debuff, and Storm Totem with Transmitter here. Well, then this is like a Vitality Totem, and the Wendigo Totem, which also deals Vitality damage. Now the Shaman also has support skills for Elemental, such as the Wind Devil, Raging Tempest, reducing elemental resistance, and also Devouring Swarm, reducing Vitality and Bleed resistance on enemies. The Shaman also has a toggleable Aura skill line, called Mogdogan's Pact, which is not only good for yourself, for your character, but also for your allies and your pets. The Shaman has two pets. Pet number 1, the Briarthorn here, and pet number 2, this Promise Spirit here. The Promise Spirit though, he dies after some seconds, you have to resummon him all the time. He has one additional skill, which is also mostly used by Vitality casters, the Grasping Vines skill tree here, which focuses on physical, bleed, and vitality damage. The Shaman also has two exclusive skills. Number 1, Stormcaller's Pact. This one is great for lightning and cold bolts. As you can see, flat electrocute, crit damage, stun reduction, loss of percent modifiers for those two damage types. And then the second one, Primal Bond. This one's really good for bleeding and physical builds, and also for pet builds. As you can see, it also gives you a damage absorption. This is like one defensive skill of Shaman as well. Vitality casters usually try to get an exclusive from another class, like Occultist or Necromancer, or even Oathkeeper. But if you don't have another good exclusive skill for Vitality builds can also use Primal Bond, just for the damage absorption, that's fine. For leveling, I suggest to play a Shaman with a two-hander, using the Brute Force line, Brute Force ability here, and the Promise Strike line, with the Transmitter here. This way you can spam this and it will be really fast. Either two-handed melee or ranged, both works. You will use Wind Devil to support this, to reduce enemy resistances. You can use Storm Totems to support this as well. And just go for Stormcaller's Pact exclusive as well. Also note that Feral Hunger is a weapon pool skill, so Feral Hunger will proc when you use Savagery, but it won't proc when you use Promise Strike. Same thing for Upheaval. Upheaval is basically a weapon pool skill that only procs when you crit. So yeah, this also doesn't work with Promise Strike, this only works with Savagery. As you might have noticed, Shaman doesn't really have as much defensive stuff as the other Masteries. It has some damage absorption over here in Primal Bond. Other than that though, Shaman heavily relies on lifesteal and HP. Brute Force and Out of the Wild give you a huge health pool already, and then you have Wendigo Totem that can heal you up, Blood Pact that gives you lifesteal, and also Devouring Swarm that can heal a little bit for you. This will not be that noticeable later on, but early on it's pretty nice. Next up we have the first Ashes of Mammoth exclusive mastery, the Inquisitor. The Inquisitor is a dual-wield ranged specialist and also a rune caster. So you can play this guy either as a caster or a ranged character. He's also a pretty nice support class for melee and ranged characters alike, also for casters. Inquisitor's main damage types are elemental damage and pierce damage, but he also supports elemental, pierce, aether, and chaos damage. So yeah, lots of elemental and pierce overcap there. You can see Death Sentence from the Word of Pain line, giving you Pierce, Aether and Chaos Resistance reduction here, and then also the Aura of Sanger, exclusive skill, giving you Elemental Resistance reduction over here. Now when it comes to main damage abilities, you can use the Word of Pain line. Later on it will kind of fall off though. You can use the Flames of Ignafar. This one got buffed in the last patch. It was bad for a long time. Now it might actually be good enough to like use as a main damage ability. And then you can also use the runes as your main damage, or the Stormbox together with like Word of Pain as like a hybrid. And of course, being a ranged specialist, you can also use the ranged passives over here together with like your default attack from maybe another class or the Baronath component to make a really nice ranged build. Now when it comes to defense, Inquisitor has the Word of Renewal line, which is a heal and also gives you lots of DA. You have Vigor, giving you more HP, and Stereo of Resolve here, giving you Aether, Chaos Resistance, and more damage to Chthonians and Eldritch. Alongside that, you have the Horn of Gander here, reducing enemy physical and elemental damage. This is, in my opinion, only like worth using though if you're not using the Aura of Sanger, because Aura of Sanger already has reduction to enemy damage, like all kinds of enemy damage. This is only for physical and elemental. And these things don't stack together, so I advise you to use either or. So you only use Horn of Gander if you are not using Aura of Sanger and you're not using any other ability from, say, another class or a devotion that also reduces enemy damage. On top of that, probably the best defensive skill of Inquisitor is the Inquisitor Seal, gaining you a huge amount of flat absorption once you like max this out. Also Arcane Empowerment here, well, giving you some offensive bonuses while you stand on the seal on top of that. Now apart from the Aura of Sanger exclusive, which I already talked quite some about, Inquisitor also has the Aura of Conviction exclusive skill here. This one is basically only good for piercing builds, and it will probably only be used whenever you're not using another exclusive skill. So if you, for example, combine Inquisitor with a Nightblade, which does not have an exclusive skill, and you're playing a Pierce Inquisitor Nightblade, then this one will be your choice. And Artifact Handling is an exclusive passive for the runes. If you're using any of your runes as your main damage ability, or like a huge part of your damage, then you should also use Artifact Handling. It's pretty nice, very good for these runes. When it comes to leveling, I suggest to either level up Inquisitor as a caster using the Word of Pain line, just max out these 3 nodes, and also support that with the Stormbox of Elgoloth. This will help you out a little bit with your single target damage, and yeah, just max out these 3 nodes and these 2, and then also max out Aura of Sanger. That's a pretty nice way to level it, pretty fast in my opinion. Or you can also use like ranged weapons to level up, use like ranged expertise and these weapon pool skills here to level up alongside either a two-handed ranged weapon or dual pistols. Next we got the Necromancer. The Necromancer is a summoner and melee caster basically. Necromancer can use pets as his main damage source. For example, the skeletons over here, the Blood Fiend. This guy is more of a tank though than the skeletons. And also he can support his pets with the following abilities, like Call of the Grave, Soul Harvest from the Bone Harvest line, and then also with the exclusive Master of Death. Kinda similar to his pets, his caster main damage abilities also involve mostly Vitality and Aether damage, with a little bit of Acid and Cold in between as well. Another main damage ability you can like focus on is either the Bone Harvest line, the Revenant's Earth line, or the Drain Essence line. All these 3 abilities can be used as your main damage source basically, and you can always support them with your Siphon Souls ability as well. And also all Necromancers should use the self buff, like this is a toggleable self buff called Spectral Binding. This will give you lots of HP, offensive ability and Aether damage, as well as Spectral Wrath. This will debuff enemies whenever you get hit, and apply physical resistance reduction, vitality resistance reduction, and Aether resistance reduction. So in this way, Necromancer can very well work for a support class for any physical Vitality and Aether build, especially when you're playing that build as a melee character, because this requires you to get hit. Focusing more on the melee part of Necromancer, he also has 2 weapon pool skills actually, which make Necromancer a viable class to support like a weapon damage melee build, or range build even. This will work for either like both ranged and melee weapons, the Reaping Strike and the Necrotic Edge here. When it comes to defense, Necromancer has 2 ways of defending himself. He has enemy damage reduction and absorption. DK from the Ravenous Earth line here has damage reduction, and also Ill Omen has damage reduction. Note that these 2 also do not stack. Ill Omen cannot be used as a main damage ability. This is always going to be just a debuff, even if it deals some damage. Like, it's okay for early leveling, but after that it's pretty meh. But DK, whenever you use the Ravenous Earth as your main damage ability, you will probably use DK anyways on top. So I adjust to you to use DK always when you use Ravenous Earth. Then you use DK over Ill Omen, and you use Ill Omen whenever you don't use Ravenous Earth as your main damage ability here. Do note that Ill Omen has some Confuse here, so that might be annoying to you to play with. If you don't like Confuse, don't use this, just use Decay. But the value of Decay will be a little bit lower than of Ill Omen. Just keep that in mind. On top of that, also Necromancer has damage absorption in the form of Mark of Torment. Now this is not damage absorption like the Seal or the Arcanist barrier that you basically have an 100% uptime on. This can be like a very high value, but only for like a limited amount of time. So you have to like time this right, kinda know when the enemy is gonna blow out like a big hit at you, or like just when you panic you can also press this to like try to survive a little bit longer. And yeah, it's really good. You should always use this. Also exclusive skill number 2 for every like non-pet Necromancer. This is probably your choice. This is Harbinger of Souls. This is very good for Vitality and Aether charts, also giving you more attack speed and casting speed as well. And lots of lifesteal. When it comes to leveling a Necromancer, there are basically 2 different ways to do it. You can either use Ravenous Earth as your main leveling ability. Until you get to Ravenous Earth, you can either use the Skeletons or Ill Omen to support your damage, and also use Bone Harvest to support your damage even further on top of this and that, or use Siphon Souls as a secondary ability. The other way to level a Necromancer would be with pets, so you focus on the Skeletons first, and then also use the Blood Fiend to tank for the Skeletons, because they can like be very squishy really fast, and they kind of fall off a bit, so you have to like make sure to buff off your Skeletons with these buffs here, here, and here, or like from your other masteries like Occultist, for example, could help you a lot. And yeah, this guy can help you tank for your Skeletons a lot as well. I would not suggest you to level with the Drain Essence line. It is very similar to Flames of Ignifire in the way that this is a channeling ability as well, and also it kinda is bad without gear support, so you can absolutely use this as your main damage ability later on if you have the gear for it. For leveling though, don't do it. But not least, I'm gonna talk about the Oathkeeper mastery. The Oathkeeper is kind of the holy mastery, but then again not really, because you can also play him as an unholy warrior. And he's also another mastery that focuses very much on shields. So the Oathkeeper has basically 3 main damage abilities as well. You can either focus on the Aegis of Menhir line, you can focus on the Righteous Fervor line, or you can focus on the Virus Might line. On top of that, Oathkeeper focuses very much on retaliation as well, or like you can focus on retaliation damage as well. What retaliation damage exactly is, if you want to know more about that, check out the next episode, episode 4, where I'm gonna talk about all kinds of stats in the game, also about retaliation and how that works. Actually, Oathkeeper has 4 main damage abilities. He also has the Eye of Reckoning, the Spin to Win ability, which is also very nice to use. Very, very relaxing gameplay in my opinion. The Oathkeeper also has the player scaled pet, the Guardians of Empyrean, and the most important part about these is the Celestial Presence. This is basically Oathkeeper's resistance reduction, and he supports physical, fire, and bleeding here, And if you use the transmuter, this will not only transmute the damage of the pet from physical to fire and physical to vitality and fire to acid, but also switch around the debuffs here. Like the physical resistance will be vitality and the fire resistance reduction will be acid. So basically Oathkeeper supports 5 damage types around physical, fire, bleeding, acid and vitality. And you can see that like theme recurring over here in Aegis of Thorns as well, converting fire to acid, and over here in Dreeg's Reproach as well, converting physical to acid and fire to vitality damage. When it comes to defense, Oathkeeper has a circuit breaker called Resilience. This is really good. It's not quite as good as Blast Shield, I would say, but it's still really good. And yeah, any Oathkeeper should use this at least as a one-pointer. On top of that, you also have Ascension here, giving you huge amounts of absorption. Not quite as much as the Seal, but... and also this doesn't have like 100% uptime like the Seal has. But you don't have to stand at one point if you use this, right? You can like move around freely, still have the absorption on yourself. Also Clarity of Purpose here, whenever you use Ascension, you gain some more CC resistance and % offensive ability. Oathkeeper also has one toggleable aura line, called the Presence of Virtue, giving you some offensive ability, some retaliation stuff. This one, Haven, is really nice for shields, and then Rebuke is pretty nice for like if you need flat physical damage and some retaliation damage. It also has the Judgment ability. Judgment can be used kind of as your like secondary main ability for AoE if you have like the gear for it. Other than that, it's mostly used for Crushing Verdict, which reduces enemy defensive ability. And also Heart of Wrath, which can be used for retaliation builds and aura builds, and also to proc some devotions. Last but not least, Oathkeeper also has the Safeguard passive here, giving you some passive stats for whenever you use a shield, and also has 2 weapon pool skills. Smite, which works with every damage, or like every weapon basically of choice. I mean, you have to use a default attack replacer like RF, for example, for this to work though. And then you also have Shattering Smash. Now this one only works when you have a shield, otherwise it will not work. And also it requires you to have a melee weapon and a shield, so you cannot use a pistol and a shield to proc this. Oathkeeper also has 2 exclusives, one focusing more on the Holy Warrior part and the other one more on the like Unholy Warrior part, I would say. Divine Mandate, this one is for fire and physical damage, also has crit damage. And then Path of the Three, this one is basically converting Oathkeeper towards a follower of the Eldritch Witch Gods, right? So this one focuses on acid and vitality damage, and also converts fire to acid and physical to acid. On top of that, this also has skills cooldown reduction, just like Star Pact. So Path of the Three is very similar to Star Pact overall, converting like stuff to acid instead of stuff to cold. When it comes to leveling an Oathkeeper, early on you have to either pick up Aegis of Menhir or Righteous Fervor. If you use Aegis of Menhir, you can also pick up Safeguard. But once you are like at Wire Smite, you should probably use Wire Smite as your main damage ability. Like Wire Smite leveling is, in my opinion, the fastest way to level an Oathkeeper. And because of that, the first, I don't know, like 5 to 10 levels might be a little bit slow, but once you have Wire Smite, you can just zoom around the map and deal damage while moving around. Really good. I like this the most for Oathkeeper leveling. You can also support Wire Smite with Judgment, or Aegis of Menhir, or RF. Personally, I would like Wire Smite and Judgment the most. Just like zoom around with this, and then also drag in people with this. Another way to level an Oathkeeper would be to, use Wire Smite until 25, and then switch over to Eye of Reckoning, and just spin to win. This is gonna be it for episode 2. I hope you guys really liked this rework of episode 2. I know the first one was a little bit clunky, and also I forgot about the Nightblade Mastery completely for some reason. No idea how that happened. Anyways, I would be very grateful if you leave a like or a subscription here on my channel. Also, if you have any further questions about like any mastery, feel free to write anything in my comments below. Also, if you would like to have like some more in-depth videos about how to level certain masteries, you can always check out my how to level X mastery videos. I don't have one for every class yet, or like every mastery yet, but I will try to do those as well in the future. And also you can check out my speed leveling videos if you would like to see how I like efficiently level a character. And I also have currently 2 solo self-found videos, one for Inquisitor and one for Oathkeeper, at least for the normal difficulty. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you on episode 3 or the next video.